Satan's probably one of the higher up controversial issues that people have, and people get all mad because my perspective on Satan is extremely different than the church's. They believe he's an angel that fell. I say no, he wasn't. No, nowhere in Scripture does it say that, and I challenge anyone. Bring up the scriptures that show it, and I already know what you're going to bring up. You're going to go to Ezekiel 28, and you're going to say, "Look, here's the king of Tyre," and speaks about, you were there in the garden, you were there, and you sinned. Well, Adam was there in the garden, and he sinned. And actually, the illustration that was focused on when that happened was Adam, and the Jews believe that was Adam. The thing that makes people indicate and think that it has to be Satan, because it says, "Oh, you who cherub who covers," keruv in Hebrew, which actually it's not Hebrew, it's Akkadian. That comes from the misunderstanding of people that a keruv is not an angel. An angel is a malach. A malach is a deputy, is literally the breakdown. It's a messenger, it's a deputy. He's one who goes before and speaks forth what God has him do or carry out a mission. A keruv is something totally different. It's when we see all these images, oh, this is going to be good. We see all these images of angels and we see wings. There's nothing that actually speaks of an angel, a malach with wings. Nowhere in Scripture. Angelos and malach, neither of them speaks of wings. The only two places it speaks of wings or two characters is a keruv or cherub and a saraf. The saraf is in Isaiah 6, and that's the covering his eyes and the body and the legs. Keruv is shown on the mercy seat of the ark with the wings facing down as they face down. They're on the walls of the temple. The keruv was in the beginning when they kicked out Adam, and he was guarding the way back. And there's multiple places, but most places a keruv is described, and it's also described in Ezekiel, the four winged beings with the four faces, describes them as kruvim. So this type of being is different than the character of an angel, so that needs to be separated first. And people who are willing to actually do the proper scripture study, they'll see the difference. The keruv, you can't get a Hebrew word if you just break it down to Hebrew. It goes to Akkadian. Akkadian, it means blessed one. So it has nothing to do with being a messenger or a deputy of God. It happens to be blessed ones. And I won't go too far in there, but the bottom line is it does make a distinguishing factor from an angel. So now to say, when you go back into Ezekiel 28, where that's the most strongest argument that they can have to try and say he was an angel that fell. And you see that character is a blessed one, and it's not an angel, a malach. You could see that that's also distorted, and it's reflective of Adam. Adam's the one who was found to sin. That's where the fire came out of him, and God ejected him. And then you got to read the whole context anyway, because there's so much more being illustrated in there that needs to be understood, because it starts with the Prince of Tyre and then goes to the King of Tyre. The whole illustration of that passage, I believe, in my view from study, is talking about the Prince of Tyre, which is a subordinate under a king, which is the offspring of this king, which is representing the nature of man. And it shows you, when you read the Prince of Tyre, all the aspects of the nature of man and his selfishness and how it elevates itself as being God, which is what we do. This is what human beings in our pride do. Ultimately, we make ourselves out to be God, and we push God out. We say, I did this, I did that. Look what I did with the work of my hands. That's what the main argument God had with Israel was they said, oh, they were worshiping the works of their hands. What I did. Then when it goes to King of Tyre, it now goes back to the source, which it's saying here's where the source started, where the nature of man that overtook the whole world started in the garden with Adam when he sinned, which is where the basis of the nature of man started, who was supposed to take care of the garden, who was the blessed one to take care of the garden, and then sin was found in him. So that totally, in my view of study, and there's much more to talk about in that, shoots down that part of the argument. Then they talk about, Yeshua says, oh, I saw Satan fall like lightning, which is totally out of context when you use that illustration, because it's talked about in, I believe, Luke and Matthew, when the disciples return after actually doing what he said to do. Go cast out demons, heal the sick, raise the dead. And they come back with joy, saying, "Hey, look, we did this stuff." All of a sudden, Yeshua goes into this trance and says, "Oh," starts speaking about a thing from the beginning of time. No, he's reflecting it off of what they just said. I saw Satan fall like lightning, meaning you guys just moved in authority to override him, and that's what he's saying. His power just dropped and fell, and that's a proper understanding. If you read in context, that's the only way to take it. It's foolish to actually think, "Oh no, he's talking about something." It's like, you're saying to me, it's like, "Yeah, I just got a promotion at my job. Yeah, I just turned the water hose off." What? It doesn't make any sense. The context is it's directly interacting with what the event that just happened and what was being expressed to him is the proper deduction. Then people try and say, and this is one I can't understand why people even see it this way, is they use the war that broke out in heaven, which is illustrated in Revelation 12. Talking about, Satan and his angels fought against Michael and his angels, and there was no place found for him in heaven. He was thrown down. Well, the context of that scripture, if you can, I don't know why people can't see this, but if you read the beginning, it says, "And I saw a woman, and with 12 stars around her head, and clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet. And she was to give birth to the Messiah," and you got the dragon there ready, waiting to consume the child. That is a figurative picture according to the context of all of Revelation, where you read the first chapter. He says, "Write down the things that were, the things that are now, and the things to soon come after this." So most of the context of Revelation is dealing with things that already happened and were happening at that time. People think it's all end time stuff. So he's giving a illustration of something that happened already, that he knows about, that he was with the Messiah, but the Messiah being born. The woman is Israel. The 12 stars are the tribes around her head being represented, because the people of God, the Israel of God, was represented as stars, not angels. Every way you look in scripture, you could see stars were referenced to people of God. God spoke to Abraham and said, "Look up and see the stars. They are as your descendants." And there's multiple places you could see that the people of God, the true people of God, are represented as the people, are as stars in the sky. That's why on the fourth day, when God made the greater light and the lesser light, which is the greater light is the true light shining, which is like the sun, which is Yeshua, the day, and then the false light, which is the moon at night, which is reflecting the sun, which is a false light. But yet you have little true lights at night that are still shining, which are the people of God, even in the dark times, that can still illustrate and show the true light of God. So all of that's represented there. So the stars represent the people of God. And this woman, who is Israel, was prophesied to give birth to the Messiah. And there she was at that time. And we see the illustration, in Bethlehem, and how Satan was looking to devour her child. Well, in Bethlehem, Herod wanted the kids to be killed, and he ordered them killed, but God saved them. And then he was caught up to the right hand of God. It's all illustrated right there. It's clear as day. I don't know why people can't see it. But then it goes on after the authority, that when he rose up to the right hand of the Father, which means after he trained these disciples, they were now going forth in power, in the same power like the previously. And it wasn't just Satan falling like lightning. It was like no place found for him. It was a war in heaven. That was a spiritual war when the disciples were able to go forth in power, and Peter speaking, and 3,000 were added to their number in that one speaking. That was a powerful move in the spirit. People's hearts being changed, miraculous things happening, people laying people out so that Peter could walk by and maybe his shadow would touch them and heal them. This was a tremendous time that was happening, where the power of Satan was being crushed. And that's the war that broke out in heaven. He was thrown down. And then later on, you see the illustration of him trying to recuperate himself, going by the sand of the sea, and the beast coming up. And there's so much to talk on that. I'm not going to go into that. But all of that is now just debunking a lot of what's being said there. There's one more scripture that's used, and I know this is going long, but Isaiah 14 speaks of the king of Babylon. Now, believe it or not, that's actually one scripture that I would give some credence to, that could illustrate the end time result, reflecting Satan through the king of Babylon, because the king of confusion. You did this is all these great men, but look what you've become. I mean, so that one I could give some credence to, but that still doesn't indicate him being some sort of angel and falling. He was designed. Now, This is probably a two-part, and we could probably separate this into part one and part two.